Peace, peace, family. We are now live. We are now live. Oh, it's going to be an amazing show tonight. It is going to be an amazing show tonight. I got a special guest. I got special guests tonight. I got the king and queen with me tonight. Listen, we're gonna have a good time. We're gonna do some learning tonight. I want everybody to get comfortable. Make sure you hit that like button. That's extremely important. As usual, I'm gonna get to a few commercials and I'm gonna introduce my guest. We're gonna be right back. All right, family. But get comfortable, hit that like button, tell your friends and family. I see the Duke of Tears is live on Black Magic 363. Be right back, family.
It's the numerational session with King Simon. Text your full name and date of birth to 347-496-1022. That's 347-496-1022. And get my books on Amazon now.
Hey there! Had a bad dream? I have dreams too. Some parts are scary and some parts are fun. Always remind yourself, it's only a dream and everything will be okay. I had a dream about being in a forest too. Check it out, my pet Petey was with me. Order your copy of Kayla Petey and the Forest on Amazon today.
All right, and without further ado, family, I want to bring on, a very, very special guest, a very, very honorable, intelligent, well-spoken, articulate genius in our community. Aseer, the Duke of Tears, and his queen is joining him, Selena Cordoba. She's not there right now, but she will be. She the queen of the organic products. So, yeah.
I actually just took a shower.
Excellent.
So I wanted to literally put a little on when I'm here. Just because, everybody nowadays just be coming on so perfect and so made up. And there's a part of me that loves where people are, but you come into a space where you're like, I'm not even in a place where I want to convince or remind people why makeup and what makeup. Let everybody live the life they want to live. But there is a benefit in not wearing it. Now I'm 46. I'll be 47. And I was at my son's gymnastics class and the lady was like, oh, they're registering older teens now. And I laughed. I was like, oh, I'm not his sister. I'm his mom. And she literally was like, I thought you were 22, the oldest. And to hear that it struck a chord in me because it's such a humbling thing. Y'all know how much we've gone through. So thank you for having me on. I just wanted to bless everyone with my husband because it's very rare that you have a space where both of us are invited anywhere. So thank you.
Indeed. Listen, I really look forward to this conversation. It's a necessary conversation. Me and Aseer grew up in the era where we heard the name of the show, Sovereignty of the Gods. We heard this term sovereignty. We was talking about this 15 years ago. And a lot of people were dealing with it. It kind of died down, but I keep hearing people talking about it. And I know there's a new crop of people coming up on the internet, I say, that need some clarity about what exactly sovereignty is, what exactly paperwork is. Is this birth certificate real? Is this, they say you could cash in. I don't know if it's the birth certificate or something like that. There's so much confusion surrounding this Morris teachings and this UCC and the paperwork. I'm looking forward to getting some clarity tonight, my brother Aseer. So to start out with, first of all, I'd like to say, how you doing? How's everything been? This is your first time in 2023. I haven't seen you in a while, my brother. Everything's good?
I can't complain, man. Allah is the greatest. Happy wife, happy life. My children are well. Everybody's healthy, We made it through another cycle, so I could complain, but I'm not. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Life's been really good.
Life was really good, man.
Taking time off social
better,
media.
Inshallah. Spending more time in the real world and striving to get things accomplished, and then just transfigurating that into this,
Indeed.
Thanks for asking, bro.
Excellent.
We were just talking before you came on about how, when we first met, it was crazy because, we came up in the era of where the baton was passed. You know what I mean? From the elders to us. And at that time, if you can remember, a lot of us that was, let's say, the younger generation, what was considered the younger generation then, we were the ones that was literally on the street, you know what I mean, engaging with people, having real dialectics with people every day, 365, throwing lectures, having, sit-ins, and like we was really active. Like when I look back, like we was heavy active in the community, fam. Like a lot of people say they was there, they was in it, but those people that was there, no, we was really doing a lot. And I see now how that really sprang into what it is now, which is good. However, even back then, when I was first, hearing about terms like sovereignty and things like that, I was hearing it from really not from so-called Black people at all. I was hearing it from people like David Wynn Miller and what I'm saying?
Forgot about him. Yeah.
Them type of niggas. The White Wayne Chandler. Who was the other one?
Was Jordan Maxwell? Was he talking about it?
Yeah, like them type of people. Tex Mars, like
and
they wasn't necessarily like going heavy. What happened was there was a book about this thick called The Matrix that came out before the movie. It was like a year before the movie.
Right.
Prior to that, there was a bunch of books circulating around that we would get from people like Aseer Bay, bless the dead, Brother Dawood 7139 Collective, bless the dead, people like that. We was getting like them thick Valdo Valerian books. Remember them joints?
Yeah.
I don't know if you remember them joints, right?
I remember. Yeah.
And so around that time, it came out like right after that, and it was kind of dovetail from that. So by the time the Matrix movie came out, it's almost like they timed it. Like, okay, we done primed them with first it was the Matrix. Then the movie came out a year, like 2 years after that. Then the revised Cracking the Code came out. Right?
Ooh,
then,
yeah.
Remember Cracking the Code, right?
Right.
Then boom, the Redemption book. So now everything after that is just a remix of all of the stuff that was in them three things. But out of all of them three, the one that I had the most understanding with and proved to be the most verifiable was the Cracking the Code joint, because it got more into the types of law and stuff that you should know, as opposed to a bunch of like statutes and codes and this and that, and how ideologically it's supposed to go. Where the Cracking the Code stuff, if you were a diligent researcher, you could use that to extrapolate other avenues of understanding finance, law, trusts, estates, things like that, and then understand the real juxtaposition between the creditor and the debtor, because that's really what it boils down to. But when you really boil down to all the way in that, the debtor is also the creditor, and the creditor can also be the debtor. Like rich people are rich because they're in debt. You see what I'm saying? So unless you have a acumen to understand finance not in a nuanced way, not in a way that they teach it like in school and shit like that, because they teach you in compartments so you don't understand the whole, how it works. So the sovereignty so-called movement that was initially started by people like those men that I mentioned, they were really into what they call the so-called patriot movement, which itself was a derivative of earlier militia-based movements that kind of congealed and split when the KKK went radical. Because a lot of these guys come from radicalized KKK families. You know what I'm saying? Who was like one of those 15,000 families at the lynching, getting souvenirs and stuff like that. A lot of these guys descend from that, but that don't necessarily mean that they themselves were that. You dig what I'm saying? But it doesn't also take away from the fact that that's still part of their culture. You know what I mean? Just like we can say like some people say the Black Hebrew, I don't say this, but some people say like Black Hebrew Israelites is like the Black skinheads, right? So let's say that's true, right? They that's still a part, they're still a part of our, you see what I'm saying, overall movement of liberation. Whether we agree with them or not, we understand them or not, they still have a way that they contribute to the, or they feel they contribute to the overall liberation of stuff. So it's the same thing with these patriot groups. You understand what I'm saying? They were brought up on white supremacy the same way we was brought up on so-called black supremacy, but we don't call it that. We call it, like, some people can divulge it into things like knowledge of self. Like, I'm naturally God, so that means he's naturally the devil, and this, and that. That can be seen as a form, as an expression of so-called black supremacy. You understand what I'm saying? And in actuality, every group is somewhat supremacist within their own group, because that's what makes them distinct from other groups. Now, when it devolves into hatred and stereotypical, conflict, that's when it, it now shows its face for what it really was in the beginning. But essentially, everybody sees themselves and their group as the primary of their experience, because you can only base that on what you come from. So you can be, let's say I'm from Brooklyn, but we live here in Andalus, Florida. I'm not from Florida. Like, I can't say that I was always here from Florida. You know what I'm saying? However, being in Florida, I can still be Floridian by respecting how they get down out here. You see what I'm saying? Like, they may not say what's up. They might say, something else. And in that's how they say it. But if I get offended that if I say it like this and you say it like that, now we got conflict. It's maladaptive. So it was the same thing with these movements coming up, realizing that in the end, they are the descendants of the ones that kind of benefited from the usurpation of the country in the first place. You know what I'm saying? Based on the Act of Congress of 1871, where they helped establish the KKK was set up from that. You know what I'm saying? And that's what then centered the United States of America, specifically within the District of Columbia. So what that basically did, in one sense, was sweepingly take everything away from the states in terms of their own independence, per se, now to giving up to this greater union. But now this greater union has now usurped its power and consolidated that power in one place that technically is outside, even though it's in geographically the place, technically it's outside of the jurisdiction of the land that it's on. So the District of Columbia is a part of what they call the four city states. The District of Columbia, London, Downing Street and all that over there, the Vatican, and there's somebody else, and Israel, I think, is the other one. And they function as city states, but they're a part of this four quad empire that has each part. So the Vatican deals with the religion, Washington deals with the military, Britain deals with the banking. You see what I'm saying?
Right.
Whoever else deals with the processing of that, the finance, you see? And then that trickles down to these other groups. So a lot of these guys who were patriots and low-key realizing that they are actually sleeping with the enemy, now they want to wait out, but they can't really do that because technically they are part of it. Like, you now waking up to knowledge of yourself, Chad, and then, your uncle, Mr. Bromstein, is like the head of the director of the CIA. So you reading all of this David Wynn Miller shit, Gary Webb shit, like you read it, it's like, oh, this is all happening and all that. And you remember, like, damn, this dude used to be in my house. This dude used to be, was at my christening. This is my godfather. You understand?
Yeah.
So that created a xenophobia amongst this class of white boys. And this is what what led to things like the Weatherman Underground and like white radical leftist liberal propagandists that were driven mad from the fact that they were part of the same machine that they trying to destroy. So they need to get validated by the oppressed class, because then that gives them the ability to assuage the guilt while at the same time take revenge on their father for setting them up like that.
Ooh, okay. I like how you breaking this down, brother. Okay,
You know what I'm
okay.
saying?
Yeah.
So, so they don't have a way out. As much as you think they are like they have what they say in the white man's burden. You've heard that term, but they also have what they call the curse of invincibility. If you watch the movie The Lord of War with Nicolas Cage about the dude that they just traded for Brittany Griner. That was him. That was him that they did that for. Yeah, that's based on him.
Whoa.
That's why it was so crazy. So if you see the movie, you see why the trade was just, that's like taking like, you know what I'm saying? The only rookie from the G League for LeBron or something. Like
LeBron, yeah.
But anyway, but it also shows you symbolically, Freemasonically, ritualistically, it's all a game. See what I'm saying? They could take one nigga from one game and one from the other, and it still be political. That shows you that it's all politics. So these guys, driven crazy by this, wind up having to go underground. Some of them become more radicalized. Some of them create the prepper movement that was set up by a bunch of ex-government people who saw all of the plans of what these niggas was doing. So they started pulling their money together, buying Dumbos. Dumbos are deep underground military base operating facilities. Getting them, buying them, creating bunkers, like doing all of this. You understand? Because we were hyper Americanized during the 80s. You know what I'm saying? The 80s, we was winners. You understand what I'm saying? Like you can say what you want. You could say, oh, it was bombing Iraq. Yeah, they was doing all of that. But I would say, however, they were winning. It was the perception of we're winners. You understand what I'm saying? So as long as gas is low, people don't care who you bomb. That's the reality of the game. So CIA know that. So they figure so long as we keep them doped up, keep the gas low, keep the drugs coming, we'll be able to ride this out and eventually get one of our operatives in there and be able to run this whole thing like we really want to do. So this is the era of the 80s. So the 80s was also about we are anti-communist. We're anti-communist, we anti-Marxist, we anti-Iron Curtain. We're anti-Iron Curtain. You know what I'm saying? Like we're not having that. So capitalism was infused in us through things like hip hop because we grew up poor. So we wanted to have what we saw on TV. You know what I'm saying? So imagine in one generation, we went from everybody seeing black people like Good Times to everybody seeing black people like the Cosbys. In one generation.
Right.
Problem is there's no segue in that. We just go from one to the next. So how did we do that? See, there's no sitcoms about that. You see what I'm saying? But there's 101 sitcoms about how to be a millionaire, how this person was able to start they fund, and how you see what I'm saying? When it came to the white so-called demographic, or at least that's how it was projected. Because none of this is real. This is all social engineering. So these white boys, these ex-government people, these hippies, right? These hippies, they're like, yo, we don't want to be what our fathers were. But at the same time, we, the so-called men of that era, 60s, 70s, we can't trust Mr. Charlie. We can't, you understand what I'm saying? Like, we can't trust him. Because he is the one that's breaking up our family. Because by the 60s, 70s, we're watching the deterioration of the family. So we went from allegedly chattel slavery and all of this stuff. They tried to destroy the family. And none of that could destroy the family. What destroyed the family? Selfishness, feminism, Planned Parenthood, pimping, and drugs.
And child support.
Right, which is the government. So these were all programs that these same people read about. They knew this was happening. So they were already prepared. We weren't. So all of the Panthers that got broke and got let out of jail and got turned and got thing, they all became social workers. Not all of them, but I'm being general. But this is where the term social work came from. Social studies didn't exist until the 60s, 70s.
Right.
Because remember, all education in America is based on the old Prussian German system of kindergarten to make the lower classes stupid. So it's not about comprehension or effect-based learning or active learning. It's about memorization. So it's not merit-based, right? It's quantity-based. So it's corporate. So these guys, again, some of them were actually really anti-establishment and started to see that they didn't really have any jurisdiction the way that they were taught that they did. So they started throwing kites out there. See what I'm saying? To Panthers, to other Panthers, to other so-called black movements that were now striving based on the social situation. We can't fight back with guns, so let's go into the mind. So a lot of these guys started going into the colleges, right? Started opening bookstores, started creating that, and then the antithesis of that are the egomaniacs that then went and tried to create movements and stuff based on the secret knowledge that they think they're getting from these white boys that's really throwing it out there, so we could throw it back to them, so that way they can figure it out, so they can move forward on their situation. So this is when you get the blending of the patriot information in now with the black liberation theology information. And this is where they start to meld, and you start to see people like Jim Jones pop up doing speeches and lectures at the NOI. You know what I'm saying? Like the NOI, they used to allow Jim Jones to speak. Like Jim Jones that killed all the people in Haiti.
I didn't know that. I didn't know that. Jim Jones?
You can pull pictures up of it. It's on the internet.
Wow.
Yeah, and he's standing there, and who right next to him? Warif D. Muhammad, Elijah Muhammad's son. So they let this maniac and these maniacs create these movements. You know what I'm saying? These egotistical maniacs created these movements and then was using their information about what they are calling sovereignty, when it's really not that at all. It's sovereignty, or a sovereign in old Moorish history is a brick of gold, or doubloon, or dinar. That's what a sovereign is, gold.
All right.
Sovereignty is when you have such a mass of that you have dominion over a given territory, reality, whatever, you dig? And then in that, you're able to create a suzerainty, which is then your dominion over what you have claimed with your sovereigns. Okay, the sovereignty movement, in terms of the pseudo theological, political, socio-economic type movement that started to develop between, let's say, 1969 and culminated by, let's say, 1996, when we started hearing about it. So by the time we start hearing about it, you gotta understand, it done made so many rounds. You dig what I'm saying? People who was gonna make what they was gonna make from that already did that, and now you have a governmental counterinsurgency, counterintelligence thing that's now using this to now get into it and try to read out who's really who with this. You see what I'm saying? Because remember, segregation worked for a reason. But during segregation, so-called melanated black people had their own communities, their own hospitals, their own bookstores, their own food stores, their own farms. You understand? Like, they had their own. So the integration only went one way. It was about integrating you into their system, and then your tacit asset, right? Then your tacit asset gets transferred to them in trust. But you don't know that, because you are now under a dissociative identity disorder that referred to as African American, or black, or Negro, or person of color, or nigger, or pimp, or anything other than man or woman.
So you're saying all of those have like a terms of art
Yes.
that equate to something financial?
Yes, because African American is a patent on that. You need to look up who owns the patent for African American. It'll really surprise you.
It just sounds so cool.
Right. But you know, they use you
That's
know
what I'm saying. They use the fact of the emotions.
exactly
And we were talking
that
about
we
that.
needed to identify
We
with.
were talking about that, how the emotions in this journey is really the driving force.
Yes.
So when someone sees something, regardless of knowing if it's real or not, the emotional body will make it real if
Yes.
it allows you to feel good or you know
Yes.
things like that. So just to be aware. I didn't mean to interrupt.
Yes, but that's exactly what they banked on. They banked on the emotional reactionary circumstance that they put us into since they took control of the country via the illegal coup d'etat of 1871 with the Organic Act of Congress, like I said, which created the perpetual terrorist organization we call the KKK, that eventually bled into, by Elijah Muhammad's time, bled into what we refer to as the law enforcement agencies, in which they all basically got clicked up. They all created a Freemasonic situation within that then could be protected by the Fraternal Order of Police, which in this era now has now devolved. It started in our era around the 80s with in Brooklyn, it was TNT. In Georgia, it was the Red Dogs. In California, it was Crash. See what I'm saying? These were all cop gangs. These were gangs, okay, of ultra paramilitary criminals who were given carte blanche to be able to go in there and really create the era of what we know as the war on drugs. So while all that's going on, you understand, you got a whole nother group of people on the white side. These guys is using paperwork now to basically reinforce their militias, because by law, every state is supposed to have a militia by law. You understand, everybody beats up the Constitution and things like that and say, oh, it wasn't meant for us. It don't matter who it was meant for. What matters is, in order for them to do and hold on to the power they got to follow it. You hear what I'm saying? That has nothing to do with you as a national or a citizen. I'm talking about them. They got to do it in order to be who they are. So that means you are guaranteed a certain modicum of respect, or what they refer to as rights. So they want to divert your rights and get you to accept the privileges. You see? So what the paperwork thing did was it started to infect and started to let people know that they could actually demonstrate and actually have a way against the Esquires and the barristers of Rome in these little possessions, trying to take their property, their house, their car, whatever. And they were having certain wins. But for every win that you would have with these guys, you would also have, you could take heavy losses too. Because these people are lawless at the same time. They're belligerent trustees. And remember, the whole thing was to keep the black and the white males apart. They've been doing this since was that Bacon's Rebellion? Yeah, since Bacon's Rebellion. They've been trying to keep specifically the Asiatic or melanated male and the so-called poor white male. They have been working to do that. You understand? So
why is that? Why is that, Aseer? Why is that?
Because they know that in the end, historically speaking, it was our ancestors that fought for the freedom of everybody in the world that was under the tyranny of the old decaying empires of the time. And part of the deal was that if we freed them and accepted them, that we would make them sons and give them land that they could dwell on without being put under further bondage based upon them not having an actual place of nationality. And thus nationalities that were already peopled by people who look like us, whether it was Polish or British or German or Irish, all of those original peoples of those isles look like us. And we can trace them all the way back to a people they don't talk about called the Grimaldi people, who are totally different than the modern so-called Indo-Europeans that they started bringing in after the Caucasus and all of that was opened up. Okay, so they were able to essentially, through past grips and showing valor on behalf of working for us, that they now could have a certain spoil for themselves. And that's what they did. This is where the term free and accepted Mason comes from. That's why we're not supposed to, we Moors, we don't got to really deal with none of that, because we are what the whole thing is based on. It's all based on me. So why would I have to go through degrees, right, externally for something that I am naturally born as? If Allah wants me to have it, I am naturally going to rise to the occasion and get it. And if I don't, then it's based on either my lack of will or my strength of will to get it. As opposed to doing a ritual that enacts me killing an ancestor of mine to be down with another group that if I say what really goes on here, they will kill me in the most horrific way. And then I have to call them brother over my blood brother who needs this knowledge more than them. But I can't tell him unless he commits the same sin against himself. So where's the way out from that? You trapped, you're in. So yeah, you're in. You're in. You can say what you want. You can dress it up how you want. You're the sovereign grand commander. You're this. You got the sword. You're the potentate. You're this and that. In the end, you the brother of Aleister Crowley. In the end, you the brother of Manly P. Hall. In the end, you the brother of all of these murderers of our people. You are. And you're willing to ride a goat with them into hell as opposed to riding a camel with us into paradise. So who's really the enemy of the people? It's them. It's not me. It's not you. It's not somebody that don't know. So it created this groundswell of internal conflict that started to happen. And so when people like the Prophet Noble Joe Ali came, he came and said, I'm here to tell you as your brother, I'm here to reveal all the secrets of the societies. From me on, it's all going to be out there. So you ain't got to do none of that. But brothers still doing it. Why? Because they want to do it. Why? Because they feel like there's a value to it somehow, even at the expense of their own soul. So if they care so little about themselves, why would you think that if they create some sort of documentation, paperwork-wise, whatever, and they happen to care to really understand it enough for themselves to benefit themselves with it, why would they want to benefit you with it? They don't.
So you're saying it's another hustle.
So I'm saying it's another grip. A lot of times because it's not coming from a sincere place. And now this is not to say that anybody talking that paperwork itself is what it's not. Because you can have a bunch of paperwork. Like the Moors, we bombarded this devil so much with paperwork, they created the Paperwork Reduction Act. Moors was hitting them so hard with paperwork that they would write shit back like we are besieged. They would use words like that. We have been besieged by the respondent's paperwork or whatever. So we feel bludgeoned in that. This be the type of verbiage they be using when you be really going ham on them and it's actually working. But remember,
what year was this that you experienced?
No, it's all good.
I just want to talk about the timeline. Because what we were talking about today was becoming elders, like youthful elders, but going through certain stages of awareness that leads to other openings. You know what I'm saying? And we can tell a lot of people that are just coming into, which is fine, but because over like the last, I'd say 15, 20 years, so many different people have different interpretations. It kind of takes the valor and the pizzazz of what could have been great in it out, because not everyone knows what they're talking about. So how do you discern who knows beside who doesn't? And that's an individual journey, because I wouldn't say, oh, don't listen to this and don't, everybody thought the paperwork was the way to go. So sometimes you got to do it to realize, oh, it's not switching up this, that, the third, because you really didn't do anything. You just had somebody type your name into some documents, right, and you felt that that was going to be the golden ticket, Willy Wonka out of, and I hate to say it like that. There might have been a time 20 years ago that I was like, oh, UCC, and you know,
because we just coming into
you're
looking for
thinking.
knowledge, and that's what
This is why also you don't
feel.
make drastic moves. If I could give anybody advice, it would be don't pay into something that you don't know the result of. You know, it's like you wouldn't
Right.
pay a doctor for medicine that you don't know how it's going to affect you.
That's
Or,
that's
look,
great advice, Selena. Don't make drastic moves. That's great advice for the folks
you
out there.
really can't. And there's so many people that will sell the idea of this helping your mortgage and this, and that's really where I feel like you got to take a step back, because if you do speak truth and you warn people, hey, this is a list, these are the people that are doing this and they have a great pizzazz for it, but it really isn't going to help you out with anything. You're just going to get further into debt, and you don't want to do that, because then you are a person of color hating on another person of color's hustle or what they do. So it's sometimes sad hearing the stories about what people invest and what people go through, when really it's like, why would you, this person's teeth aren't even cleaned.
Right.
This person doesn't even have,
Basic.
you know, like basic stuff. This person doesn't, he won't even allow you to see where he lives or his family. Like a lot of people that sell this paperwork, I hate to say, really are incomplete and are just looking for something because they don't have an acumen of knowledge. They don't have a tool. Like, do you think that I literally wanted to be here all day this morning making these products? But when you have an extension or a tool, it becomes something that you can offer people. So offering just paperwork to someone is with no result is really sad. And I only make that analogy because sometimes you got to say, look, this, as much as I want to teach people this, that, and the third, there's not a lot of people that are going to listen. They're going to be like, well, what can you show me? And show me the money. And then it became a thing of popularity and money. And that's what I watched. I really watched the conscious community become who's the most famous, who's the most aligned with celebrities. And that allowed people to think the paperwork was real. Like, logic does have to play a role in it. But when you are just looking for someone to guide, sometimes you can get really usurped into just selling your soul, your car, your vagina, girls marrying boys, just doing stuff without, just, it just became really wild. You gotta take steps back to preserve. You gotta take a step back and say, let them hang themselves. Because if I'm the one that's like, or if he's the one that's like, hey, this is why you have to, then you're selling an idea. You become a salesperson of something that's so sacred. You can't do that. It lessens the value of it. Right. It lessens the importance of it. And then you just look like you the first one to always raise your hand. You know, thou doth protest too much. Straight up. So it's not to say that I don't. I'm sorry. What were you saying? I thought you were saying.
What's your thoughts on the whole UCC thing? Because that's a word that we heard constantly in the last 15 years when it comes to the paperwork. What's your thoughts on that? Does it depend on how you do it, or is it just, would you just not
everything is a tool? Like the UCC, like people think that you can give paperwork in and then they miraculously start to treat you in a certain way. That can be true. That it's happened to us. Like it's shit like that happens, but it wasn't so much of the paperwork that I'm producing. It's the fact that the paperwork that I'm producing, I know how to stand on because I didn't get it from somebody else. Like in the early times, we spent almost about 2.5 to 3 years just studying it. To know how to establish and render and draft the forms for the whole harmless, the power of powers, the power of attorney, the Schedule A. Like, it's a lot, right? And we were hands-on with it. Like now, it's like,
you just need
see, back in the days, you wanted a UCC and you did it, you had to pay a certain amount of bread. What we was filing was heavy. So it was real securitized documents and stuff like that. And if they didn't accept it, they keeping your 150, 250 racks. You see what I'm saying? They're not sending you the money back. They just gonna send the paperwork back, say, you did something wrong. But they won't. They didn't never used to tell you what it was.
Right.
So this created intense understanding of securities and trusts and the states, and then an understanding that the UCC itself is just an itemized way to consolidate collateral and make it clearer who is the creditor and who is the debtor, and allows the protection for the debtor from the creditor and vice versa. Because let's say you create a lien and you lien yourself, or you have your trust lien you. Now somebody else want to put a lien on you. Nobody could do that because it's you on you. You see what I'm saying? So in that now, like when people started to understand that they could use it to collateralize, because there's a section in the UC called for the collateral. That's where you list all the collateral. So that's where you're supposed to list all of the things associated with you from birth that you are collateralizing for this effect. So God forbid anything happens to you, you as the creditor, right? And whatever trust or whatever you have as a debtor or vice versa, you now have direct accounting of what that is to be able to securitize that and then turn that into a dividend, be able to draw from it. It's not to be able to tell police, like you had Moors that was out here taking UCC papers, and when the police or whatever showed them, they would just pull out the paper and be like, yo, this is what it is. You gotta leave me alone and all that. And it's like, it don't work like that. You gotta understand. Even the prophet said, he said, go to those who know law and speak in a mild manner tone, and you would always receive a favorable reply. So the UCC became almost because it's in the crack in the code, it's in the redemption and all that. So it became a way for people to file extraordinary claims against the United States. You see what I'm saying? And make the United States the debtor. But if you're going to do that, you have to be able to justify how that goes. This is where the declarations of nationality and things came in. And this is where the Moors started merging, you see what I'm saying, with this type of understanding vis-a-vis latent patriot paperwork. And thus now it becomes a thing where Moors now start trying to cross the streams and then try to, you know, kind of like fuse them in a way that would allow them to be able to do some of the things that they erroneously think they could do, like adversing houses and these types of things based on paperwork. Well, I mailed my paperwork to all of these people. Now they know. Now I get the right to do what I'm doing. And it's like all commerce is based on exchange, and it's based on correspondence. So if you send something to somebody, right? Moors, when we would send something to somebody, we would send it under the auspices of what they call natural law. So natural law looks at that which should have been done as done. So if I mailed you this letter and you were supposed to do such and such in a letter and you ain't do it, you're in violation, not me. You see what I'm saying? So even now people coming to me saying this and that, by the stance of natural law, you are responsible because you were given the right to do what you were doing, and whatever happened, you didn't do it. That had to go out the window when we stopped dealing with each other in equality, and then we started letting other people that wasn't us come into the game. So now we got to start writing shit down. We got to start memorizing it and creating canon, so this way we can keep a track of how these people are, because they was not on that level with us. And the more we did that, the more we fell from our noble nature, from having to create all of this bureaucracy for these things to exist, which then took us out of the seventh density, sixth, fifth, fourth, then boom, we crash now on the third, and it's hard for us to get anything together. So naturally, we start looking outside of ourselves to find how we can make this happen. When really the paperwork that you're supposed to be manifesting is that's coming from your individual estate and the associated entities that estate controls, which then interfaces between you and the external states, whatever they are. That's what makes you or somebody can be considered as a citizen of the United States, because the United States are all the corporations that are housed in the District of Columbia. And the corporations are the citizens of that country. But we are flesh and blood, and we don't live or reside or domicile within 10 miles square of Washington, D.C. Therefore, we have the right to exist under what they refer to of inalienable rights, right? Which then allow us to create a third party to interface with that does not allow us to lose our station, but forces them to execute what they're supposed to do. That's the difference between reparations and a redress of grievance. Redress of grievance, you got to pay. Reparations, that's subject to. You see what I'm saying?
Question.
Mm-hmm.
How do you think over time there's, I don't want to say that there's confusion, and I'm not trying to think, but, I've noticed that there's a lot of confusion when it comes to people, and they're like, I've heard you say Moors. So do you have to be a Moor in order to file paperwork? And
No.
and how does that, okay.
No,
so you don't have to be a Moor
to file paperwork, but it's really like when we say paperwork.
And what do you mean? That's
like
that's
ambiguous.
what I was going to ask you. What
That's
is
the
that?
other thing.
Even in listening to him, I don't want to think, but there must be so many people that like, what is he even? What are they? And it's somewhat over your head because what is it? What are you talking about?
I'm talking about
you. This is what the listeners sometimes. And I also go, when people are just coming out, you have to. Sometimes I remember 20 years old is different than 35 or 40. And it depends also on personal wealth and where you come from and if you have personal wealth. But for us, I could say the first 20, 15 years, it was a little bit different because it took time for us to get to where we are. So sometimes people want to jump in the first 3 years and be like, oh, I'm going to accomplish this, that, and the third. And if you can't help me get there, then this is BS. And it's not. You don't have to be a Moor. But what I've noticed is that people with a distinct nationality are able to interface with a different platform than those that don't. So all the work that he's done over the years, and I love how humble he is, but literally he must have a dossier just for us to know who we've met through time, who we've helped, and just a record. The same way people keep records, let's keep a record of everybody you've ever helped. You don't mind me sharing this, right?
Get their paperwork and stuff right. But when we say paperwork,
what do you mean by that's what I was going to say?
We're speaking about documentation, whether it be affidavit or mandamus or any type of documentation
license and just
that can fall under it. But
okay.
I should say, however, it's more about what you're representing. Like I said with the white boy, the white boys wind up coming to a point where they realize we're really not from here. In the end, we're all really not from here. But these guys who we saying that we imported from another place are. However, so how can we control the land while disenfranchising them, but still leaving a way open so when they do take power again, those of us that was low-key helping them can say, see, I left this for you, I left that for you. See what I'm saying? So this is where, like I said, the Moorish thing comes in, because what the Moorish paradigm really represents is the global jurisdictional power that was regulating commerce on this side and other sides of the hemisphere prior to the modern epoch of time that we know now. So everything that we know now came from the time before now. So in order for them to be able to control the now, they have to control the perception of the then. So history itself has to be reworked so that way the inconvenient parts, the parts that doesn't show them as the dominant force on Earth, are segmented and swallowed away in these orders that we created as little memory banks, literally, to preserve this for them when they finally do wake up and get rid of all of us. So in the meantime, we're going to party like it's 1999, and we're going to make sure that as much confusion goes on, that they themselves get wrapped up in the minutia of what they perceive as moving ahead. So because you don't have a unified political movement, you got to work from an individual. But instead of working from your individual estate that has equity and substance and money and insurance and stuff like that behind it, you're just doing it as somebody just coming into knowledge of self and expecting that when you write, you know, Pope John, he's gonna mail you a letter back. It's not gonna happen.
Right.
No matter what you mail to these people, unless you're directly engaged with them in suit, right? Meaning that they've injured you, you've done something with them, or you have something to call them out for. If they don't have a means to correspond with you, they're not going to do it. Why? Because they technically can't even see you. Because you are alive. They are part of a dead entity, a corpse, a corporation. That's what they're a part of. So when they send you bills, that standard bill that you get from a corporation or letter from a corporation is the same dimensions as a grave slab. You understand? It's just the size is different, but essentially it's the same dimensions as that. When they talk about debt and falling into sin, these were all code words for finance. These are finance code words. Like when they say, oh, he lost his shirt. That comes from the time when the Moors, when certain Moors were engaged in these relationships with these European powers. And in order for the other Moors that they would not to kill them, right? They would literally have to take their garment off and put it on this dude. And then from then, though, they lost their standing, you see, amongst their own people. When they say we shipped him down the river, he got sold down the river. That is directly talking about how they would kidnap Moors in the East and ship them down the Mississippi River, but they would list the Mississippi River on the manifest as the Atlantic Ocean. And then when they would dock at Greenville and take them off, they are now docking as Negroes. So they got kidnapped as free Moors, get off the boat as Negroes, then they get sold down the river again. Now they Guineas, then they get sold over here, then he's an Indian, then he gets sold over here. Now he's you see what I'm saying? You are whatever you are because you don't have no standing. Because we haven't redeemed ourselves based upon us trying to get the easy way, the paperwork route, which is the idea that mailing this is going to produce that without a clear understanding of how that is supposed to happen.
You know,
of abstract ideological.
I said real quick, you know, something that was a real popular back then, I think some people still talk about it, is the fact that people were saying in the movement that you could I think get money from your birth certificate. That I think that was supposed to be a bond or something like that.
Yes.
And you could turn it in and get a big check.
Yes, they call that that's a part of what they call indexing, but that's also connected low key to insurance. And
has that ever worked? Do you know anybody that's worked with?
Yeah, I do.
Wow, okay.
The only problem is there's always a catch, is that
Exactly.
when you doing it like you okay, everything in the United States runs through a third party. So what the perception is that, like in the movement, the perception is that debt, for instance, is something you don't want to have, right? But debt keeps you from being taxed. Rich people use debt to make millions. So that's something that they only telling the poor people and people who have misunderstood the literature that they read. So that's that. So you can be a debtor and you can be a creditor, but that's a left-right hand relationship. You want to be able to, in a sense, to really make it be both. Because then that allows you to draw from both without really being a part of either. And the only way to do that is to have a third-party entity that's specific to you for your specific interests, that's based on your specific, in our case, our specific also nationality. So this way, on a public level, I'm endowed and protected by, let's say, a trust, and let's say a holding company, and let's say a management company, and this or that, right? And a foundation and a charity. This is what rich people do. And then they hook all of that up by funding it all out of their own trust. that is based upon the name that's on the birth certificate. Because when you were born, they took out an $86,000 to $80,000 insurance policy, basically on you, that they refer to as a custody trust. And that has been accruing interest for every year that you're alive. However, at the year of 18, you're supposed to reach the age of majority, and you're supposed to take control of that from the belligerent trustees that have made you forget that you are actually really the one in charge of the whole thing, because they have made you believe that you need them to manage it. So once you figure that out, you also realize that the structure that they've given you to operate in always is going to keep you in a subordinate position amongst the trust. So what you have to do is strip away the nuance, the fake facade, the moniker that they've given you to block you from actually taking full possession of that name. And that is where the Declaration of Nationality comes in, because then that creates a delineation. See, there's a thing in the United States referred to as the Clearfield Doctrine, which says there's a clear delineation between the national side of the government and the so-called citizens. And that citizens can be nationals, but it's like they say, like, all mail is registered, but not all mail is registered mail is certified, but not all certified mail is registered. You see, this is the type of situation you're involved in, because you're with somebody that's constantly trying to change the definitions every so couple of years, because you're figuring it out. So now that you figured it out to this point, they want to get you to come back into it by listening to somebody that's going to tell you some shit that is not conducive to what you've already accomplished. And unless you are diligent enough to do your own research on it, and to ask questions, and to go to, if you feel you need to go to school to understand how they do finance, do that. But while they doing that, look at real stuff on YouTube, like real stuff now. I'm not talking about these fly-by-night jokers, but I mean people who really understand what they talk about with finance, and understand what your financial plan is for yourself, your trust, your family, your policy. So this way, you can mitigate any external damage before it happens. Because when somebody start coming to you and start talking to you about certain things, start saying, hey, the UCC can do this, and that, but you've never seen this person do it, or you've never seen what comes from it, then you know, oh, this person is scamming, he grifting. Because the UCC is not used for that. It's actually used for this. But you wouldn't know that unless you did. And that is what I'm saying is the overall continuous problem. It's not so much of even the paperwork, because the paperwork is just a umbrella term for the different conversations that are being had online by people who grew up watching people like me, who grew up watching other Moors and other people talking this stuff, and then over the years, hopefully learning from mistakes that people like myself and other people have made, and actually might do something better. However, if you're not seeing a mass evolution of these type of people, but you're just seeing more and more people talk about it, you know ain't shit happening. Like being busy does not equate accomplishing anything. And you want to accomplish something when you start engaging in paperwork, in engaging in any type of thing that you have to sign your name to something to get something else. You want to know everything you can about that A to Z before you do it. If anybody says that they need your social security number to help declare your nationality and all that, that's a scam. If somebody says that they need your address, or they got to take your deed and put it into the Prophet's Trust, that's a scam. If they talking about, if they talking about, yo, we're going to take your birth certificate and I'm going to index it for you, and then I'm going to show you how to get, that's a scam. Because they may know how to index it, meaning get the CUSIP number and all that for you. They may, because you can know how to do that. People can do that. However, accessing that, you see, because it is actually also in trust to protect it from you. Imagine if they gave all of these black people the reparation money they want right now, in the mental state that they in right now. The world would be destroyed. They would destroy the world. You know what I'm saying? And I have the utmost faith in my people's potential, but what I'm seeing I gotta be real with, and they're not ready for that because they still are referring to themselves by patented brand names. You understand? When you refer to yourself and check African American, Black, all of that, that is a brand patented name.
And those are the things, not even to sidebar, but then those are the things, and those are the hooks that are sometimes thrown out there to see if you want something. Like, for instance, with Black-owned businesses, I would love to consider myself that because look at me, I'm not white, I'm definitely a person of color, but there's a whole other thing going on with Black-owned businesses, and when you apply for this, what you are actually putting yourself under. It's a lot different than just the cultural. I would love it because culturally people would be like, oh, Black-owned, and then I might get some benefits, but all benefits like that are somewhat compelled.
It's coming at the expense of your nationality.
It is, and if you don't, it's a lot.
And it's grouping you into a subordinate class.
And it's almost like you ride a bike forward, but then are in reverse for the next 10 miles.
Right.
And you don't necessarily, and that's why I said, years ago we thought, or at least this is why you stay mutable and shit, but we thought that certain things might manifest or happen based on us knowing this type of stuff. You have to really, listen and just check your ego throughout time, because having an acumen of knowledge and knowing how to do certain things, it can equate to certain financial independence. But if you, let's say, come from nothing or come from a family that doesn't have any financial anything, it can play with your intellect and mind and making you feel as though you should be further along, or you should think, same thing, there's certain things or certain tools you pick up so that you can be of service, or that you can offer something that can work for people. People can tangibly see and feel. Of course, I wanted to do stuff, and we talked about this, whether it was a travel show, doing stuff, talking about history, whether it was, putting in so much work. Just the other day, he looked at something and it was like, wow, Blog Talk, we have 1.3 million listens, but 1.3 million listens didn't equate for us having certain things offered or certain we constantly have had to create, like yourself, your own platform just to be consistent in something you love. But when that platform doesn't yield any type of anything to keep you going, to keep you sustained,
go into the real world and make shit.
And you don't want to hustle. You don't want to hustle people. So for us, for instance, okay, cooking more with less, or just the yoga stuff, years of putting in work, I thought, okay, maybe I'll get a lot of it does come with affiliations, associations. You can know people, but if you're not willing to be under a certain moniker, they might not trust you with certain other stuff. So even the Black-owned businesses, 99% of Black-owned businesses, they're deltas, they're circle sevens,
part of the system.
They're part of
the machine.
Order. So I don't want to say, oh, that's why I don't have. No, I have extreme success because of shows like this, people like you that have allowed us to speak about certain things. But if I didn't, I don't know where I would be, because everything nowadays is numbers and associations. And sometimes even this elder said to us, oh, the reason why people don't invite y'all, we were at a baby shower. She said to us, the reason why people ain't gonna invite y'all out is because you look younger than the people that are hosting these things. These people are 24, 25, you're 46, 50, you look younger than the host. So why would someone want to have you on their show if they're 28, 25? Why would they have a 46-year-old on their show that looks younger and is in better shape than them? Why would they do that? It's going to deter everybody's attention. It's going to make people think. And sometimes you just got to remove your ego and say, it's so much about who you know and what you're willing to co-sign in order. Same thing. Once you get major marketing, once you're in branded stores, the contract with all cosmetic companies, you can't have more than 2 or 3 ingredients that work to heal people, because then you're kind of considered pharmaceutical, and it falls under a whole other medicinal than it is cosmetic. Cosmetic actually today means to break down. So there'll be like a lot of trends the Korean skincare trend. If you look at the Korean skincare trend, just follow a link on Amazon, anything, and look at the ingredients. There's over 20 cancer-causing ingredients in all brands that are on shelves. And the reason why I shift that is because sometimes people can't even hear or see clearly because the first layer of the dermis on their scalp has been ripped for years based on how dope their hair looks relaxed. And trust you me, the fibroids, you can tell a woman the reason why you're having this cramping, the pain, if you got to get rid of a lace front or a weave, it can be really detrimental to someone's self-confidence and how they feel about themselves. And it's not to say I don't love women in all their states, but if you are striving to live a healthier life and just eliminate a little of the things that might be causing a little imbalance, then yes, you do, and you should ask yourself, why do I feel as though I need this wig? Why do I feel as though I need this lace front? Why do I feel? All feelings, emotion. Why do I feel? Because the world's making me feel ugly or nappy or frizz isn't good, or all these things that I do have to mention, because that's when I was like, as much as I would have loved to be this with him doing stuff, you grow up and you learn we're not going to be welcomed. Doesn't mean you're not loved by the people. It's just the people that might run a show, that might run something that you could be on, that could yield certain money to open up.
Who have paperwork
to open up, right?
Because paperwork also mean the police, Like a lot of times these guys be talking about, oh yeah, I've been doing paperwork and I just got my paperwork back from this person or another. And a lot of these guys be straight agents. Be straight agents, and those agents be using paperwork to wrap other people up and get them locked up because they got a quota to meet. And now you got this FBI, DOJ type of thing where they're now creating fake groups, the same way they used to create. But they created a group back in the days. You remember this girl named Patty Hearst? You ever heard of her?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Remember when she got kidnapped? That whole thing was an op. That was an old CIA op, and that group that was created was based on the Panthers because they were trying to dilute the real Panthers. Because after they got rid of Bunchy and Fred and what's his name, Bunchy, Fred, and Huey and them, that was it. Everybody that was left, they was all ops. You did. So. They needed to create a whole version that they could really control. So that became the limited, what they call Gentlemen's Unlimited or Gentlemen's Incorporated. And they came in and they was acting like, and they was headed up by a dude named Karanga. And Karanga is the dude who wound up setting up his own little fake movement that they would call the Symbionese Army, which again was all CIA set up and all of that. And from there, he created his own little cult. They had their own paperwork, right? Their own little thing or whatever. And he was like beating up black women, like going crazy and all that. And this is the nigga that created Kwanzaa.
Wow.
This is the nigga. This is what I'm saying. They've been using, again, these different organizations that are really working together behind the scenes on some Freemason shit. And they're using this to be able to keep a quell on any white organizations that may be trying to really help people, any so-called black organizations, any so-called AIDS. They are the ones that create fake foundations. All these foundations that you see on TV getting millions of dollars, those are the foundations that are the fronts for the human trafficking and everything that's going on today. And all of that is being processed with paperwork. They have a paper trail on it. So ultimately, the paperwork thing is also about people not feeling confident enough to go and stand up their own to and go talk to these people face to face about what they need to have happen for them. Because the paperwork is supposed to precede the meeting. So like before I would go to court, before we would go to court, we would send them what they call a notice of special appearance. Mm-hmm. So this way they know when we show up in there.
We weren't going to court on some getting in trouble.
Whenever we would have to go.
Right, I just
want to make that clear. Right, for anything, I would use a letter of special appearance. So this way we wouldn't be seen in the general sense. That means I'm in and I'm out.
Okay.
So you see what I'm saying? Like the paperwork is supposed to precede the king. So when you are using it in a fashion, let's say to proceed or preside over your domicile, your kingdom, which essentially would be your family trust, right? And all of the associated entities that work to facilitate that, whether they be businesses or whatever, all of that is going to a certain place. Your nationality now, as a so-called Asiatic, melanated male or female in country, on the soil, from the land, foreign to the District of Columbia and all of that, you're not supposed to have no interface with them. The less interface you have with the government, the better. That's how it was supposed to work. Our ancestors would go to war over the littlest thing. If they heard somebody said something against the Republic, they would go and shut that person down, get rid of them altogether. Because this is the, you have to understand, the Second Amendment, just here in the United States, because different people from other countries come here and they live here in America and then receive the so-called protection from the 14th Amendment on, or let's just say the Constitution on, that right of defense and self-preservation can be extended throughout the world. You understand? That means people know if I'm in this country over here and they are on my head trying to kill me, there's a place that I could go to in the world, get my paper up, get guns, get money, and funnel through organizations or UN charities or whatever, and funnel money to my homeland to free it. What that means then that the right to bear arms to protect one from the tyranny of government is there to protect everybody in the world, not just here. That's why niggas come here to get citizenship, because then that equates to them when they go back home. Because if they still got their US passport, they could go to that embassy, and the embassy is supposed to hold them down. Because the embassy is doing business on behalf of the American people. And the corporate entity that is doing that is the United States District of Columbia. So regardless of how corrupt whatever it is, it has a function. And so long as there's people from all different nations of the world here, it's not going to fall like that. The only way it will is if we go into this whole thing as to how we were raised. We were raised to hate the land that we come from. We were raised to hate the fact that we were born here. We were raised to look at every person that's not my complexion or your complexion as a threat, as an enemy. You understand? But it wasn't always like that. It came like that at a certain point in our growth and development, usually when we reach puberty. Because that is when the heavy indoctrination, at least in my generation, heavily started. And that is what kind of created the mind state that pushed us into the Black liberation theology shit instead of the nationality stuff. Because they'll talk to me about Garvey. They'll talk to me about King. They'll talk to me about Evers and Fard and Mansa Musa and everybody. But they never talk to me about Noble Jawari. Why?
Statement.
Why? Because.
Well, it's the same thing in the movement today, if you were to make that analysis. They talk about this person.
Yeah, they'll talk about everybody.
Or like if you say, somebody says, oh, somebody sent me something like, oh, they're looking for more. I said, they're not looking for us here. 10 other people that don't even know what Moorish history is will jump that rope and will jump through the hoop because they want to be identified as something that they're not. I don't even know why. Sometimes it's like, is it just to deter people from someone who really knows what they're talking about?
Yes.
Because if everybody's like, look, this is who we need to talk to, they're like, you know what? We're going to talk to that other person.
Yes.
Even though he sells hot dogs on 59th Street in Columbus Circle, we're going to talk to the hot dog maker because the hot dog maker is popular. The hot dog maker, you know, everybody goes to his stand for hot dogs. Yes. This is where we have, you get it.
It's popularity.
Definitely.
Everything's popularity.
Even at this point, I don't even try. Like, someone was like, you haven't put a thing. I have maybe 5-6 products that I haven't even placed on Instagram. And really, I have to thank your platform, Rich, and maybe 2 other platforms that opened up. Sometimes people are like, oh, you know, we need a thing. I can't compare my business to the way other businesses work because I'm the only one making everything. Everything, once you get to a certain place, they outsource. They get their stuff from China. So you really don't know what ingredients are in it. And that to me is a problem. Even if I were to be an mass, I'm going to keep the recipes the way they are because there's certain herbs and stuff that have to be in there for the healing of the skin. And I just think that people don't care about that anymore. People will sell anything if it means that they can get money. And my whole thing is that's great, but if you don't see any growth, if you don't see anything that's changing in the community, sometimes it can be a little frustrating because I would have loved to open up a gymnast spot, a swim center, a music school, and just have it be all under one roof if we had the investors. And I didn't come from that money. So sometimes when I think about things like that, we go, well, let's just try to help people that we do meet on the journey one at a time, because we might not ever get that spring to just think anything, but that doesn't equate to success. It doesn't equate to having a fulfilled and happy life. Half the people that I see that are constantly divulging information look tired. They don't have any type of, it looks like they're all using each other to stay consistent as something that they've got to keep alive. So it's like, if you were to back off of it, would it die? That means the energy is not real. You're using each other's energy to keep an idea going because you can't create anything on your own. You can't, and the only reason why you can't is because people are more focused on fame and getting money than they are to creating something of longevity that can do those things. But you always ignore, really the intent behind something. And people ignore that. And it does catch up with you after 45. If you're talking knowledge and you're selling this idea of history, but none of it is matching up to how you live, how you treat your loved ones, are you there for your children? Don't let this community suck you so dry that you don't have anything of life, and it's dry in the streets. You're just looking for it becomes toxic. And that's just something to remind people of. You want longevity, you sometimes got to take a step back and not give the people what they want. That's a lie. The people get what they want because you have real one-on-ones. That whole other idea of the people, different.
I gotta wrap it up. But I want to get to one question from the family. Got to at least get one question before we get out of here. I want to thank everybody for tuning in tonight. Great show, a much needed discussion, and Selena and Aseer came through with it tonight. A much needed discussion. So I want to thank both of y'all for coming through. We're gonna do one question, then we're gonna get it in, and I want to show the people. Yo, Selena, you ain't even know. Look what I got, Selena. You ain't know my lady ordered it for me, and I've been using it. Let me put it closer. Yeah, my lady surprised me and ordered it, and
this is just from today. This is just from this afternoon, this morning. But it's literally to say, I want to do more, and things have been dope with the business. But if it wasn't for platforms like this, and sometimes. Thank you. I don't always want to talk about what other people are doing. And that's why even on the last show, I said, stay focused on just solutions and the products that you have, and not on what don't work with other people or why people need to stay away from makeup. I'm not here to deter anybody from that, but there is a greatness when you do find something that heals and helps kids and eczema and headaches and psoriasis and joint pain. They're not going to sell them in Walmart.
Let me ask this last question before we get out of here. Oh, before for those who are wondering, the link is in the description. www.cordobaorganics.com for those who want to know. Shout out to all the Virgos in the world. Last question. Virgo. Last question before we get out of here. This is something that's going on right now. I said they want to know your thoughts on the migrant situation, and they're forcing them into our neighborhoods.
Oh yeah.
What's your thoughts on that?
This is what not your audience, because your audience is very upstairs, as well as most of the post and pre-conscious. Pre and post conscious community on YouTube. You know what I mean? Y'all very up there. But the migrant thing is just another wave of what they did. They did this. They've been doing this for centuries. You understand? This is how the native so-called Americans got here in the 13th century. There's a book you can get called The Historical Conquest of Peru and Mexico.
I don't see it. Mexico.
By it's all good. By Genghis and them, the dark-skinned Tartarians from Asia came over in the 13th century, brought with them the so-called Siberians that we call Native Americans today. And we, fought them to a standstill, allowed them to stay on land because they couldn't go back across the joint. So they allowed to stay in the plains, and they was able to live as homeless people in the teepees and the wiki ups and all of that, making animal skins and shit, living in the street. I'm saying this is how they live. That's how they live, right? And we was living in the cities and all of that. So when that didn't work, maybe around the 14th century, that's when you start bringing all the Europeans over here, all of the melanated ones that was running shit. Then behind them, all of their slaves came. Then again, it happened in they always doing this. They always trying to bring people over here to rework the demographic to make sure that we do not go past the 13.6% birth dearth that they kind of say that they have us in. I think it's way more than that. Yeah. However, abortion puts up heavy numbers. It puts up more numbers than anything else that's happening to us, unfortunately. And I don't really see that changing no time soon, especially with the present legislature, DNC, that's backed by the CCP, that's all functioning under far left radical dissociative disorder agendas, trying to create a specialized class of mentally ill people over the majority of sane people in the country. So what they want to do is invade the country via Mexico by having China outfit a lot of the cartels with the fentanyl, and then they bring the fentanyl up through that, while at the same time Biden has created a pipeline to be able to separate the children in this, so the children get into vans and buses without parents between the ages of infants all the way up to 16, and they putting them in vans and they shipping them up to places in California that are run by non-profit organizations that also have connections to things like the Man-Boy Lovers Association, the obvious human trafficking organizations. So ultimately, this is all about the human trafficking ring that has been running since Biden got in office. And he has been running it with the help of Kamala, with the help of the cartels, with the help of the nonprofit LGBTQ PDO, organizational groups that are functioning for the trans right movement above human life. So these are the people advocating for the sanctuary cities to be totally dominated by people. They want to be able to make immigrants police without no test. They just give them a gun, and now they go and get to come and arrest you. They can't even speak English. They're giving them stipends. They're also creating places in the so-called black communities, because the black people were duped in the last election by the so-called bourgeoisie, black feminist, gay left. And those people shamed so-called traditional black males and females in the traditional nuclear families for the idea of a future melting pot audience that we all can merge into. And thus is created the fifth wave invasion of the United States by these different quote unquote poor people that are really all of the mentally insane that was locked up in Venezuela, Bolivia, Honduras, all of the criminals, all of the rapists, now I'm not saying that every immigrant is that. I'm saying though that if 1 million snakes was coming at your door, you would not stop to say, okay, that's a garden snake. That's not going to bite me. That's it is. What you're going to do is just slam the door. But you can't slam the door because they have equated you not liking immigrants to you not liking niggas. They've created you not liking.
Deep.
They've equated being melanated and being oppressed in this country as the same as being trans now or being gay now. So whenever they want to do something, they use a face that look like us to pump it. And when you look at who's pumping the robots in New York, black people. Eric Adams, his white DNA. Who's trying to lock up Trump? Who's trying to lock up YSL and them? Black women, black people. This is not to say that some of these niggas ain't criminals, but it is to say that you can't have the criminals locking up the criminals. That's all I'm saying. And the DNC is criminal. Right now, while we're talking on Russian TV, they are airing mad files from the Hunter Biden laptop on mainstream TV. Right now, the same laptop that they told us did not exist and was Russian information when they are the ones that just came out and said that they lied about the whole thing. Who's going to jail? Nobody. You know why? Because people like us are the cudgel. A cudgel is like a hand inside of a velvet glove that's punching you in the face. That's what black people are for them. And they are okay. Black people in mainstream Hollywood, mainstream politics, mainstream woke economics, they are okay with selling you out. They okay with the child mutilations. They okay with the abortions up to 9 months. They okay with the human trafficking. They okay with all of it. So stop going to these people like brokies, expecting them to do something out of the kindness of their heart. The only way we're going to be able to do anything is for my trust to hook up with your trust, and then our trust put up some bread so we can get somebody to look like us to go there and lobby for what we want. And because our trust got so much money, they are not only going to do what we want, they're going to make sure that it get done. Because if it don't, there's penalties now. And the penalty is what? No money. Look at what's happening to Bud Light. Look at what's happening in Target. Look at what's happening to Kohl's. Look at what's about to happen in Chick-fil-A. You go woke, you go broke. And I'm not talking about the woke Erykah Badu shit, because they used her as a face for it for a while. I'm talking about the agenda of depopulation that they're using under the term woke to turn our children against us, create a quasi-dystopian Nazi state, global estate, that then creates a perpetual class of eunuchs, sodomites, and demons. So if you're not with that, I suggest you stop filing erroneous paperwork that ain't going to do nothing for you, and holler at people who actually know what they're doing. Somebody or people who have been in the community longer than a biscuit.
And the most people that are supposed to be doing that don't really have social media pages, aren't on Twitter, aren't on Instagram. I've talked to some dope people.
TikTok is a Chinese military app. So if niggas is making millions off of TikTok, technically, you know what that means, right? They're being paid by the Chinese Communist Party. Think about that. Not to cut your wisdom, but Jamie Foxx is caught up in that right now. All of them Hollywood people, Praz and them, again, messing with paperwork, going to parties, hooking up with niggas because they got money, trying to get close to Obama. Praz from the Fugees brings this active Chinese agent amongst these Hollywood dudes. He wraps them all up in espionage, and now they all basically going to jail. Jamie was about to testify right in that whole case because he was outed by Leonardo DiCaprio on the stand. And one of the parties that these niggas was at that he's talking about took place on Epstein Island. So, like I'm saying, Morris, we are looking in the wrong places, not just for knowledge, but for upward mobility. We got to start going within. Man knows not from being told. We got to go back to us, like I was saying when we started, going back to us actually talking, writing letters to one another, working together without social media. That's the way we're going to be.
And then what's so interesting is that if it's not popping on social media, sometimes people don't think that it's successful or it's not good. And that's why I really wanted to say there's, you don't, brother told me the other day from Japan, he said, I know that you stress, your marketing and it's not thing. So let me tell you something. The more business is selling their stuff on Instagram and showing everything through social media, the less they actually popping it in real life. He said, and I hate to tell you this, but some of the ones that you see, like the successful businesses and they have the shows, he said, no, it's another sponsor, it's another agenda going on with it. That's not what they're paid for. They're not paid from their products.
No.
Because no one's making these. It's not that. He said, if you can sell your stuff for 6 months to a year consistently without being on social media, now you have a working business.
Success.
He said, I can't even talk about investment or what you could get until you can bring me your numbers when you have not posted on social media for 6 to 8 months.
And mind you, her business during the pandemic kept about 5 other businesses afloat.
But that's just from people saying, hey, if you didn't order my, for my label company, my lights wouldn't have stayed on. You had like 185 labels. And again, I'm not saying that to pat myself. I'm saying it because I was not successful. I didn't want him going to lectures, going to different states, bringing back money, tired, drained, just to be able to just, I wanted to contribute big time in his life where he didn't have to do the things that he felt he needed to do in order to make money. When you have a gift, you don't want the gift to be thinned out. At least that's what I
read it up. That then created an instance for us to be able to then socially understand how we need to move
and what
then
changes
use that
we
as a model, as a viable lifestyle options for others. So this way, I'm not doing like you got the flyer for the seminar and all that. Like we're not doing this.
Oh, Aseer, let me show that before we go. Hold on, I forgot about that. Aseer, let me hold up.
Big up to brother Joey.
Oh yeah,
we decided to do something together out here.
Yeah, so what's this about? Aseer, what's this about? Freedom awareness seminar.
Yeah, basically, just kind of like getting into more of a direct line of communication as to the stuff I'm talking about in terms of how to establish a working estate and all of that as a Moorish American or a Moor, because Moorish Americans are usually seen as people who are specifically coming from a Moorish Science Temple of America, but not all Moors acknowledge or come out of the Moorish Science Temple like that. They get knowledge of it. They might get it through Great Seal. They might get it through wherever, but it doesn't change the fact that the prophet said that whether we in the temple or not, when we out here amongst other nations, we supposed to show each other favor before everybody else. So what we wanted to do was basically bridge like a historical aspect of how and why things are the way they are, while at the same time creating a viable solution base of what you can do today, specifically without you having to give up your social, give up your house, sign your stuff over to this person, go and find that and all that. No, we're talking about what can I do within my own household to be able to generate the type of capital that I need to be able to function and perpetuate this lifestyle choice for generations. And it's simple in the sense that we have been taught the exact opposite. Like everything that I'm understanding about this is now the reverse of what I was told, because Moors were scared to go to court. So they would say shit like, oh, well, you ain't gotta be in a court. You gotta do this, this, and that. But these same Moors would want to, go to the court so that way they could sue somebody or, you know what I'm saying? Or like put a lien on somebody and shit like that, or file paperwork and all that. So that's when I started to realize that there was a fear of actually seeing success from this. So in talking about people like Brother Joey over the years, we would compare notes and really see that like the more we consolidated our own power base and the more that we did for what we need to do for our family's estate and trust, the more successful we actually were becoming. And it was also predicated on the lack of me going out, like I said, to lectures and stuff like that, to do it, to have to spread that message. So we wanted to do something collectively that we could start to do maybe annually
Dope.
to
Dope.
start to make it. So this way, after a couple of years, we can actually start having conventions and people can really start showing what they brought or what they've been able to accumulate from this situation. So this way, it's not based on some internet shit. It's not based on specific paperwork that you'll download and do all of that. No, this is stuff that you can actively do now, but it is predicated on your nationality and being a Moor, because that is really the ultimate indemnity that then allows you to kind of encompass it all. Like if you go to the CDC website and type in North American Indian tribes of all regions, what the first thing that's going to come up is Moors on the CDC website. And then under that is going to be all the so-called Native American and Indian tribes that was here in America. And it's pages of that. But the heading that you got to get it under now is Moors. We did that. We put in so much work over the years, letting people know so whatever, that they wind up having to do little subtle changes like that that benefit what it is we talk about. So we're having these subtle changes. Imagine what we can do if we had concerted efforts and we had agendas that we got together with. So instead of going to convention and just, swearing or bringing Moors up to be adepts or becoming sheiks and all of that, we now have a financial plan for them to be able to establish different temples throughout the country and all of that, that won't have to worry about getting shut down and all of that, and won't have to worry about being embezzled and all of that. And at the same time, people who aren't, let's say, Moorish or Moorish Americans that don't want to deal with that, who got businesses and stuff like that, they now have a place where they can come. You see what I'm saying? And then take that same success without us having to be on TV, without us having to sing, dance, buck dance, sell a rap record, sell our people drugs. Because that's the other thing now. Solicit money. No, let's use our own and then pay each other. So this way we don't got to be in debt to nobody but each other.
And there's a lot of people that.
And once that happens, everything I'm talking about is really tax-free, because the tools for us to do all of this is there without us having to go as hard as we have been reading in these books and on these TikToks that are only 5 minutes long. And in the end, like I said, is a Chinese military op. And since TikTok, as an example, has existed, look at the erosion. Look at how much this anti-human, anti-child situation has developed. So instead of saying, okay, well, TikTok is evil and all of that, let's just not use it. Let's set up our own joint. Black Talk, whatever you want to call it. Whatever you guys want it black, cool. Let's make it that for those people that still want to be black. Let's give them something. But let's own it. Let us own it.
I'm not anti-black.
So if it's going to be black, let one of us own the patent for it.
Right.
You dig? And then let's give it back to our people so we can decide what we do with it, as opposed to being like these immigrants, being like these drug mules, just being used as pawns to destroy a beautiful country. Because regardless to how bad this place is, and I know some hating American niggas, and these niggas is still here. So it cannot be that bad, brother. If you are still here, still going to work, still talking about with a 9-to-5 job, still telling me that you oppressed. Like I'm over it.
Hey, listen, on that note, I want to thank you and Selena for coming on the show. Magnificent show. Once again, before y'all get out here, please, both of you, leave your contact information for the people.
First.
The reason why I didn't want to go first, because I wanted to say you're literally the only person that has allowed me to talk about my product. Why are you always trying to make me feel like CordobaOrganics.com? You don't even let me thank you properly. But literally, because it's a stepping stone. I didn't do what I wanted to do the last time I was invited. Sometimes it'd be like, and it'd be like, nah, you got to build it. I don't want to just jump in and tell everybody what's so chemically and what's wrong. And that's what I felt to do the last time. But then I wouldn't have shared any of my products. So it's a building, you know what I'm saying? I want to thank you for allowing me to do that. That's really what I wanted to say, because nobody allows us that space. unless we create it ourselves. And creating things yourselves is great. But what I've learned now that I have a couple of employees is that it really can work if you have a couple people with a similar vision that aren't trying to tear down what you're doing. So it might take 15 years, but once you get there, you're going to be like, I'm glad I didn't, you know, to go for the okie doke and just do something that I wasn't passionate about.
Definitely.
CordobaOrganics.com. And again, you get a free lit chat, a free gift with every order. Orders go out in 3 to 5 days. If it's a busy week, you'll get them the week after you order. So literally, I'm grateful to keep that up. And regardless of how many orders come in, I get them out the same week that they're ordered. That's something very big for me. So thank you guys for everything. Thank you.
You can hit me up at houseofl@hotmail.com. You can check out Gumroad, www.gumroad.com. Type in Aseer the Ducateers. You'll see a bunch of information, material, stuff like that. You can check out on me. Definitely hit me up on YouTube. Please subscribe. Please hit notifications. They've had a shadow ban on my page for about 3 years.
Damn.
So I have mad viewership, like million plus, but on my feed it only say like 47 and a half. So please subscribe. Also make sure that you get notifications because they be having me on that. Also look out for the A-Dot app coming out soon. I'm gonna have my own app with all my stuff and stuff like that. Great stuff on it for everybody to check out. So this way I have my own platform directly.
It took
and
so many years.
It'll be on
Thank you,
Apple
Apple.
Play, it'll be on Google Play. It's gonna be popping. When I
so
get
proud
it
of
launched,
you,
I'm gonna
Jack.
come on the joint. I'm gonna do
It
a
took
joint live.
years, and these people don't be approving this stuff.
You know
Sometimes
they
you
put
get-
me through the ring.
They Google and Apple must have.
You know, these niggas was like, yo.
It took like 8 months, like a year,
Crazy.
to approve something that could have been
So,
approved in 2 weeks.
Definitely. Thank you,
So thank
brother Dave. Brother Dave, you've been working with me on that. Definitely want to give him respect on that. Also, all of the malls, Temple 8. If you want to hit me up, houseofl@hotmail.com. Anybody want to send donations, you could do so via Cash App to $DS418.com, or you could do it via PayPal through dukeoftears@gmail.com. But definitely, if you want to do the donation joint, you could do that. And just to, as we reiterate, love yourselves.
Longevity.
Don't hire activists in your business. If you hire an activist in your business, just look at Target, Bud Light, look at what's going to happen to it. Keep activists out of your businesses. If anything, make the activists you hire. If you do have to do that, everything you do, base it on a meritocracy. Don't base it on race. Don't base it on color. Don't base it on creed and none of that. Do it based upon can they do the work or not. That is what is going to allow you as a successful business person or a successful being to be able to move forward, because you're not going to allow scallywags to do that. We got to go back to the era of winners and losers. We are winners. People who are trying to destroy our way of life are losers. So let's stop making the losers winners so the winners can stop being losers. Islam.
No hot dogs, no vegan hot dogs. I got human stuff in it. Really try to stay away from all the soy products. Yes, it's great to get off meat, but if you're not gonna just vegetable and do your little potatoes, really try not doing all the fake hot dogs, the fake meat, the fake burgers, the impossible burgers. They're impossible because they don't. It's impossible.
It's better you eat a real Angus 100% beef hot dog than eat anything
no, I don't even
that
advocate
is
that,
plant-based or whatever, because half that stuff got human clone meat in it.
And
Look
so
it
does
up.
and so does meat.
Yeah, it is.
Chicken
But I'm
meat,
saying,
but regardless
until
of all
you get
that,
your own cow, don't rock with
That's
that
what I was
shit.
gonna say. Let me just remind the coattails of that,
You know,
and remind people
but
of
let
that.
this man go. Love to you, brother
Your
Rich.
son, much love to your
Love
son.
to your family. Love
Thank
to
you
your
for
queen.
being patient
Love
with
to
us.
the platform. Love to the audience. Peace to the Moors. Peace to the human families of the planet Earth.
Thanks for
Anybody
people
hit me
hearing
up?
this as unison and not as anything else.
Indeed.
We both talk a lot, but I've been shut my mouth.
Islam.
You know this, so thank you guys for allowing
No
the moments
problem.
that I had. Thank you.
Peace.
No problem.
out.
Peace, family. Peace.
Peace, fam.